Great information that we need to work with and take back. We're going to lighten things up a little bit. Fellow that comes up with some really good programs and ideas from time to time. Every once in a while, he really has a really super duper one. Steve Clark from ARUP is going to talk about the future. You know, we talked about where we are right now. We're talking about what we'd like to do. Let's change just a little bit and look at where we're going to be in 2050. Not that far off. And Steve's got some great ideas on that. So Steve, if you'll let us know what you think.
Thanks. Appreciate it. You guys are you're either here to hear me or to get the $200. I think it's probably the $100 bills. This is ARUP is a company that looks into the future. We did a thought piece on. Well, first let me tell you a little bit about ARUP. People say, what is ARUP, or what does ARUP stand for? Well, this is what ARUP stands for. This is Sir Ove ARUP. He is our founder. He started the firm. He's a British citizen of Danish descent. Started the firm in 1946, right at the end of the war. His wife kicked him out of the house and said, go do something. And we grew the firm to around 13,000 people now worldwide in over 30 countries and 90 offices. It's a real privilege to work for ARUP. We did a thought piece trying to think, what's rail going to look like in 2050? And where are we going with all this? And how do we position ourselves as a firm to respond to the changes that we see? And you've heard a lot of this, and there's these mega trends out there. 100 years ago, or 117 years ago, 2 out of 10 people lived in urban environments. And by 2050, we estimate that 7 out of 10 people are going to live in urban environments. And then we talk about how, you've heard today, how in 2050, Texas is going to have over 50 million people. And they're not going to be living in the country. They're going to be living in the cities, and we know which cities they are, and they're the ones that, well, one of which we're in right now. By 2050, 20% of the population is going to be 60 or more years old, and as opposed to around 11% right now. And the way the world is changing, over 50% is going to be what's considered middle class. So we're getting wealthier as a world. These are global statistics or global trends. And this is going to drive how our transportation needs are. Please forgive me, those of you who in the Metroplex that aren't from Dallas. I'm just showing Dallas. This was 85 to 2016, and we see how Dallas changes. These are travel times in 2017. Folks have already talked about that. It takes a long time to get to the Central Business District if you live outside of the Central Business District. And it's not going to get any better as we get more people. Here we have Houston. That's where I live. We have Houston in 1980 versus Houston in 2010. Each one of those little squares, or the pixels, is a 3 by 3 mile square. So it just gives you an idea of the size, but also the growth. And my family is from Houston originally, and where I live now, where my house is, my father passed away now, but he used to hunt out there. And so we're growing and growing and growing. And as people have pointed out, you cannot pave your way out of here. And the world is changing like we can't even imagine. Could anybody imagine that the world's largest taxi company has no taxis? Or the world's largest hotel company owns no hotels? And soon probably to become one of the largest retailers in the world has no stores, Amazon. And this is all happening without us even realizing it. And so we look back at these, what was the magazine, the Popular Science, and the things that you saw back in the 60s with these little personal pods that you could ride around on rails. Well, you know, you'd think, okay, that's kind of crazy. But go to Heathrow Airport, get off at Terminal 5, and you ride on a little personal pod on a guideway. And this technology is being implemented in other places. Revolution can be quite simple. And I remember when I bought my first luggage set, and it had no wheels. And now, can you imagine? Well, think about that. Think about how wheels on your suitcase has transformed the way that you travel. And it is a revolution. And it can be simple. It can also be complex. And I dug this up. Who's ever heard of an Osborne computer? And yet, in 1981, this company was selling these at a featherweight. I can't get the thing, the pointer to work, but there you go. This little guy here. The guy on the left doesn't stand a chance. He's got a briefcase. The guy on the right's got his Osborne computer, portable computer, 5-inch CRT, and if you pay extra, above the $1,795 in 1981, if you pay extra, you can get 200K of additional RAM, and the guy on the left doesn't stand a chance. This thing comes in, and by the way, it weighs 24.1 pounds, all right? But think about it. Look at this. Do you suppose the advertisers even, it says, it's inevitable. Do you think they really understood how true those words were? Because, and I've looked around the room and I've seen folks picking out their laptops, and I had my laptop, and I made an adjustment to my presentation this morning so it would fit on the screen, and I don't go anywhere without it. And so the world changes, and we have new technologies that are coming in. I thought Todd's talk was fantastic on the drone technology, and who would have thought about that 20 years ago? And what is it going to be in 20 years from now? And we don't know. We can't even think, because I guarantee you back in the early 80s, none of us thought about how personal computers would change our lives. We couldn't imagine it. And we have new technologies like swarm robotics. What is that? Well, these are robots, miniature nanobots that behave, that can be trained to behave as colonies of insects like ants or colonizing insects, and they work together. Well, that technology could transfer over to connected autonomous vehicles so that we end up with autonomous vehicle technology, but they're all talking to each other, doing things beyond our comprehension. I hope we don't end up like the Matrix where the machines are running the world, but we can, but the point is that the technology, the way it advances, it takes us beyond what we can imagine. And so I'm looking back as we're looking forward here. And you know, this guy, that guy is cool, all right? Y'all, there's people in here that remember those, yeah? And I remember the first computer that I used was exactly that, a Compaq that used 5¼ inch floppy disks, and nobody even knows what a 5¼ inch floppy disk is anymore. And yet now, look at this. This does 100 times more than either of these ever did. This is somebody making a hotel reservation on their cell phone, and I make car reservations on mine. And this technology, where's it going to be in 20 years? I don't think any of us can even imagine. Occasionally, I get out my technology and I'm bold enough to call home and suggest to my wife what we might have for dinner. But we grew up with this, not really knowing. In the 70s, somebody told me, you know, you're gonna get to a time when all you carry is a piece of plastic and you don't need to carry around money anymore. And you think, are you kidding me? And now I travel internationally and I don't carry any cash with me. I just carry my debit card, my ATM card, so I can get cash out at the other end. And this world truly is changing in ways that we can't imagine. We have driverless trains. I worked for a project in Brazil. It carries 3.5 minute headways, Sao Paulo Line 4, carries over 700,000 people a day, and it uses driverless technology. There's no drivers. And that line is projected to carry, within 3 or 4 years, 1 million people per day on a metro line with no drivers. And we have, you look at the potential for different freight studies. Oh, I love this one. I was in Korea, and I saw a wall similar to this where you can order your groceries. That looks like a shelf, doesn't it? It looks like a grocery store shelf. It's not. There's little tags on there. And the person takes their smartphone and they go down, they pick out the items that they want. They tell it what store they are going to stop by when they get off at their station stop, and their groceries are picked up, packaged, paid for, and ready to go. That's amazing to me. And who would have thought that 20 years ago, and where are we going 20 years from now? I do believe that we're going to, it is going to continue changing how we travel, how we work. It's going to change how we just get around. And when you think about how the population is getting older, I'm close to getting into that 60 and older group, and I guarantee you, every year that goes by, I am more and more appreciative of any help that I can get. And the technology that we're coming up with is going to be helping people to do more with their transportation experience. We will have integrated mobility. I talked a little bit about connected autonomous vehicles. Working on the Texas Central project, we're looking at the customer experience and how a person with their smartphone can do everything from buying the ticket, checking in, scheduling understanding everything about their travel, and connecting to the other end. We use Uber. I'll use Uber to get to the airport tonight to go home to see my wife because I called her and suggested what we might have for dinner. And we are technology is changing faster than we're able to keep up with it, and yet it is us that is creating it, and it's an interesting dichotomy there. Dr. ARUP down at College Station, who's developing the freight shuttle, it's in early days. It's kind of clunky, quite frankly, but it's way cool. And imagine in 5 or 10 years, once we get some pilot projects going and the wrinkles are worked out and the technology is developed a little bit more, we're going to have driverless freight. Well, there's already driverless freight trains. They're using them in the Pilbara region in Australia to haul iron ore. But there's going to be driverless freight trains, and where does that, along with all the passenger service, where is that going to take us? Well, to a fully integrated, comprehensive system where you have all these technologies working together. You have drone technologies or unmanned vehicle aircraft that are monitoring, that are controlling the systems on the ground, optimizing the system in real time, doing security. You're going to have automatic freight systems where the only human hands that touch it are at the beginning and the end, and maybe even that goes away sometime. Certainly at the delivery point, at some point, it has to serve a human. You're going to have automated vehicles that are working together to transport you to a train station, to a high-speed train, eventually driven by a computer and not by a person. And they already are pretty much driven by a computer. You know, it's that story, you stick a man in there with a dog, or a person in there with a dog, and the person's job is to feed the dog, and the dog's job is to bite the person if they try to do anything with the controls. And so this, truly, the technology is advancing so fast. And our thought piece, I've joked around a little bit trying to lighten things up. Go on our internet, go on to the ARUP website, look for Future of Rail 2050, and you can take a look at the article. I like this from Mr. K. The best way to predict the future is to invent it, and I can tell you that from ARUP's perspective, we think the future of rail is something that will be created. It's not going to be something that just happens to us, and we absolutely intend to be there. And with that, I want to thank you very much for this opportunity. So do I get to draw my own card?